We are live and recording. Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us. Happy Monday. Wait, no, not a Monday. Oh my goodness. Happy Thursday. Where did that come from? You can tell I was off for today. I'm so sorry if I scared everyone. Happy Thursday, everybody. I am very excited because we have Payal Doshi, who is going to be in conversation with Juliana Brandt, and we are discussing. Did I get it right? I said Juliana, right?
Perfectly right.
I was like,
perfect.
I was doubting
Perfect
myself. I got inside my brain on it, but we are discussing.
You thought too hard.
We're discussing Ray and the Blood of the Nectar, which, ooh, that's such a satisfying title to get to say. So just to give you a little intro to our authors, Payal has a master's in creative writing from the New School, New York. Having lived in the UK and US, she noticed a lack of Indian protagonists in global children's fiction. And one day she wrote the opening paragraph to what would become her first children's novel, the one that we are celebrating today, Ray and the Blood of the Nectar. And she was born and raised in Mumbai, India, and currently resides in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with her husband and 3-year-old daughter. When she isn't writing or spending time with her family, you can find her nose deep in a book with a cup of coffee or daydreaming of fantasy realms to send her characters off into. I don't think anyone watching this can relate to that at all. Not at all. It's only what we all love to do. And Juliana is the author of The Wolf of Cape Fen and A Wilder Magic, and she's also a kindergarten teacher with a passion for storytelling that guides her in both of her jobs. She lives in her childhood home of Minnesota, and her writing is heavily influenced by travels around the country and a decade of living in the South. When not working, she is usually exploring the great outdoors. Now that we have the formal introductions out of the way, everyone to the right-hand side, we have our chat section. Drop a hello. How you doing? Will be in there commenting. And also, if you look down below, there will be where it says ask a question. I would highly encourage you to hit that button, ask a question, because the best part about events is getting to interact with the authors. And most importantly, if we want more good books from great authors, we have to purchase their amazing books, because why would you not want to read an amazing story with diverse characters in a fantastical fantasy world? Like, what? I mean, come on. You don't have to think about it. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Juliana, and I will see y'all at the end of the event. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was beautiful. And please, for anyone who's watching, you can add in comments on the side, and I will try to be watching those. But Payal and I are going to talk a little bit later after she does a reading, so we will have awesome conversation that we'll go over, but she's going to start with a reading. And do you want to introduce what you're going to read about before you jump in?
Yes, I should, because it would be very confusing. Thank you, Juliana. I'm so happy to be in conversation with you today. It's like,
thank you.
It makes me so happy, and I'm so
glad you invited me.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Yes.
So, I'm going to read a little bit from nearly the middle of the book. As we know, well, I give a little synopsis of what the book is. So, this is Ria and the Blood of the Nectar, and it is a story about 12-year-old Ria Chaitri, who lives in Darjeeling, India. And on the night of her 12th birthday, her twin brother, Rohan, goes missing. And after that, she and her neighbor, Leela, decide to embark on a quest to find him. And it takes them through to the village fortune teller, where they have to unravel riddles. There are clues they have to solve, and they ultimately portal into this magical realm called Astranthia. There, Ria has to battle with dark secrets from her past. She has to fight with evil creatures. There's a ruthless villain. There are a lot of friends that she has to make along the way. And I feel like the story is really rooted in adventure, but also family and friendship. And I hope that kids and adults who love reading middle grade enjoy reading this fantasy book. And I should say that there is a ticking clock. So we have to see whether she can save Rohan and the realm of Astranthia. So from where I'm going to read, Ria and Leela have just landed into Astranthia, and they don't know anything about this land, obviously. They're still coming to terms with the fact that it is a magical, fantastical land. And they have tried looking for Rohan, and they haven't been able to find anything. They've befriended a native Astranthian boy called Zarantha and a pari, or a fairy. Pari is the Hindi word for fairy, called Flula. And Zarantha suggests that they should go to these whispering walls, which is the structure that emanates secrets, and maybe they might find something about Rohan there. So that's what I'm going to read from. It's chapter 12. All of the chapters are really cute illustrations. And okay. Chapter 12, The Whispering Walls. A gigantic mold-ridden bud sat on a dirt road, emanating a buzzing hum. Susurrating voices rose and fell from its walls, and as they got closer, it turned into a cacophony of 1,000 whispers. Zarantha led them inside without hesitating. Leela followed nervously, and Ria's skin prickled as she trailed behind them. Once inside, the bud was musty and cool, and the whispers dulled into background static. Flula flitted along the bud's inner walls, lighting cobweb-covered lanterns placed within alcoves. The light revealed its aged facade, peeling and mottled in places. Ria pictured people sitting close to the walls, letting go of their secrets. "What do we do now?" she asked. The hollowness of the bud echoed her words. "Ask your questions," Zarantha said, sitting down beside her. Ria crouched close to the wall. "Have you heard of Rohan Chetri?" she whispered. The drum of voices lifted and dropped, and Ria only heard gibberish. Judging by the quizzical looks held by the others, they hadn't picked up anything either. "Is Rohan Chetri in Astranthia?" Leela asked more loudly. Flula sailed to various points on the wall, pressing her ears against it. Ria did the same, but all she caught between the swell of voices was a random word. "Golly fuzzle, was it?" Ria tried again. "Do you know if a boy named Rohan Chetri has been kidnapped from Earth?" The whispers ebbed and intensified, pounding the wall like a headache. Flula hit her fist against it, producing a faint knock. "Help her, secret keeper! I demand you tell her what she has traveled all this way to know." The voices went on, fighting and scratching over each other. They escalated like chants from 100 lips, and Ria wanted to scream for silence. "I'm sorry," Zarantha said, kneeling beside her. "I hoped you would learn something." Ria rested her face against the bud, defeated. They had portaled between worlds for nothing. A tear slid down her cheek and fell onto the edge of the wall. The voices went silent. Everyone exchanged glances except Ria, who was too deep in her misery to notice the change. She brushed away another tear, and Leela grabbed her tear-streaked hand. "Ask the question again, and place your hand on the wall," she said. Ria caught the twinkle in her eye and did as she was told. "Rohan lies locked," came a raspy voice, loud, lucid, and clear. Ria's heart leaped with hope, but before the voice could finish its sentence, the march of whispers rose and stomped out the rest of the sentence. "Flaming flintstools!" Zarantha exclaimed. "How did you do that?" "I think it's the tears," Leela said, her eyes round like chiku's. Ria wiped another wet spot on her cheek and placed a damp palm on the wall. The bud went mute. "Oh, greatness!" Zarantha bellowed and broke into song. "Come one, come two, come three, come all. Bequeath unto me your prayer calls. Those far and few on sincere pew. Leave behind a salt of dew. Now hear, the whispers veer, as wonders fall into one's ear. Sincere and inner drawl, a secret from the whispering walls."
Yay. You read that so beautifully.
I feel like I stumble on my words so many times. No matter how many times I practice, I'm like, oh.
I know it's hard. It's hard to read your own work, but you read that beautifully. And I love that section because it's such a good portrayal of like the magic that you have through your entire book. Just the fact that she can talk to these flowers and like start getting information, like that is an excellent section to have read. Okay, before we jump into our conversation, I have to say, because one of the things for pandemic for me is that I was not able to read a lot of books. I think I read maybe like 7 books last year, and I think I'm maybe at like 7 or 8 books this year, but I read your book in like a day.
No.
It was so, yes, it was so easy just to sit, and it was comforting and beautiful and fast paced, and all of the heart and emotions and your beautiful writing just made it enormously easy to read and very enjoyable. So thank you for asking me to join you on this and for writing such a fantastic book that I've seen you post is doing really well. You got an orange banner on Amazon.
I did. It lasted one day, but
That's awesome.
I don't know what happened, but we got it for that one day, and it was so exciting. I feel like, you know, there's so little you can do once the book is out into the world, and you just like hope. You hope to find readers, and you hope that the readers like it. So it makes me so happy that you enjoyed the book. And coming from you, I absolutely love your books. I have both of them.
Thank you.
I have the Wolf of Cape Fen as well.
Thank you.
And I found it very difficult to read in the pandemic as well, especially because I was debuting as well. So it was so, you know, there's so much going on. But I flew through your books. I mean, you're such a gifted writer. And I have a couple of questions for you too.
No, this is about you. This is about you. So sometime I will invite you to my event. And
I love that.
I would love that too. Okay, so I want to jump in and talk about Ria, obviously, because she is our main character. And it's Ria and Rohan, her twin brother, and they are complete opposites. And you write them just beautifully how different they are, where Rohan is the extrovert. He has tons of friends. He does everything perfectly in Ria's eyes. She thinks he does everything perfectly and everybody loves him. Yes, and adores him. And she believes that like her grandmother and mom loves him more. And Ria thinks about herself as, I mean, she's an introvert. She gets exhausted being around people. She has a hard time making friends. So I was very intrigued because I'm an introvert. I identified with Ria, but I was really intrigued at how you decided to write them so different from each other.
Yeah. So I have a sister. She's older than I am. And we are polar opposites. And I find that that's very common between siblings. You know, it always amuses me because you have so many shared experiences, apart from the fact that you practically have the same DNA as well. But you can be so different as people. And I kind of wanted to capture that with them being siblings and then additionally being twins. I knew of a few twins even back in school, and they're always so different. You know, they look the same, but they're different people. And so it was important for me to have them have two different personalities. And for Ria, I consciously wanted her to be introverted, someone who isn't who you typically pick to be the main character or the hero of the story. Yes, you have reluctant readers, but reluctant heroes in stories. But she, you know, again, I wanted to write a character that had flaws, had insecurities, more than flaws. I wanted to say insecurities, because I think that middle grade, you know, that 10, 11, 12 age in your life is an age where I feel like you stop becoming children and you become these little adults in making. And that's the time when you start grappling with big people emotions. You know, you start realizing what's happening in your own home. You know, if there are fights happening in your family or with your parents, you start comparing yourself to your siblings, to your friends. You start thinking about how you look or how others perceive you, or what types of friends you want. And you just have so many of these inner emotions going through you. And Ria is battling quite a few of her own demons. Her dad passed away when she and Rohan were babies, and nobody talks about him. And she knows there's something wrong there, and she really wants to find out. And she's very inquisitive. Her mother is clearly battling her own demons, and Ria doesn't understand that because, you know, she's her kid. She wants attention from her. She wants love from her, but for whatever reason, her mother can't give it. So she has, you know, she's facing that too. And I specifically wrote her mother to be not a very typical or stereotypical Indian mom, as Indian moms get stereotyped as. You know, they're like gregarious, they're like, come, eat, you know, like arms wide open for everybody. You know, they're just, that's what an Indian mother is usually thought to be. And yes, they exist, but also every other type of, you know, like they do everywhere. And so I didn't want, you know, and again, Indian families are known to be large and big and, you know, which we have that, right? So many cultures have that too. And I wanted this to be different because this exists very much so also. So it was important that Ria was this character, the underdog, the girl who is battling her own demons. She is a bit selfish because she's trying to like survive and figure out her own self.
Yeah.
And here we have Rohan, who they used to be very close when they were younger, and they used to try and find out about their dad together. They, you know, would go through their mother's things and see if they could find any clues, so they play together. And then they grew up, and Rohan is the kind of personality who, you know, accepted his situation and moved on from that. And then, you know, went on to make more friends, and he's just more extroverted by nature. And so that happened to him. And she just drew more inward. And so she doesn't have any friends. And she doesn't think that she is friendless. She believes that she doesn't need friends, that she's okay, that she's, you know, she's not lonely. She may be alone, but she's not lonely. And I think there are a lot of us in middle school who have felt like that.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
You don't have to be put in this big situation where your brother goes missing, or you know, have the tough situation that she comes from. But I think that it's a very relatable thing. And I wanted Ria to be someone more kids could relate to, because I think we're all really struggling with something or the other in middle school, most of us at least.
Yeah, and I love that you say, you pinpoint the word insecurities, because that's what middle school is about. And her insecurities come through so clearly of, I'm not like Rohan, and people don't love me because I'm not like him, but that's okay. I don't need that anyway. Instead of, you know, it takes her the whole story to really say like, oh, these are the great things about me, and this is why people do love me. You know, that's such a powerful story. But I like how you were talking about the family systems, because that's something that I really noticed in your story, is that you made a point to show a really big family with Leela.
Yes.
Leela, Ria's best friend. And then Ria's family is very small, and they live in a completely different type of home. So it was very interesting to me that you decided to show that. Was that just a very conscious part of your writing?
Yes, it was very conscious, because again, you know, the sad thing, the good and the bad, I would say, when you're writing you know, when you're representing a community that hasn't had as much representation, you almost take it upon yourself to do as much of the representation as you can. And you obviously cannot do all of it. And it's not like I strive to do every type of representation, but Indian families are known to have joint families, where I did exaggerate with Leela's situation, where they had so many of them, but it's a very common thing to live in, like, especially the sons don't leave the house. So it's like when the son gets married, his wife moves into the same house where his parents live. It's always a girl that moves out and gets married, and she moves into her husband's house. Okay. And so if there are two sons, their whole family lives in that house. The sons, so the parents, the sons, their wives, their children. Oftentimes, grandparents are alive. So I grew up in a house that, you know, my dad has two other sisters, so they moved out. But it was my grandparents, myself, my mother, my sister. We lived in this house. I mean, we still do. So joint family systems are very, very common, but it's also changing. You have nuclear families that are, again, a very, you know, that that's happening as well. So I wanted to show that you have both of these types of families. I wanted to show in Ria and Rohan, kind of touching upon what you said before. I don't know how much of that happens here, but back home, you really get compared to your sibling. Like, if you go to the same school, the teacher's going to be like, you know, your sister was such a good student. You are very mischievous, or your brother used to get good grades. Like, you know, or your mother will tell you the same thing, or your grandmother will tell you the same, your aunt will tell you the same. You'll be like, oh my God, we're two different people. Like, stop already. And, you know, grades and, you know, studiousness, you know, when it comes to school and books is really important. And that's the other thing I wanted to show, that Ria was not the top student in her class, Rohan would get the higher marks, but that does not mean that she isn't just as smart, if not smarter than her. That you can be street smart and you can be book smart and you can be both, but there are all kinds of smart and intelligent. And then again with Leela, I wanted to show that, again, a joint family, you imagine this big, great, like big hug of a family because you have so many people. But even then, you can have your own insecurities that Leela just didn't feel seen enough because there's so many people. Her mother is constantly preoccupied with so many things, like cooking for the whole family and taking care of it's just, there's so much going on. And so sometimes to just sort of show two different sides, that Ria, who knows that they come from such a small family, she wonders why relatives don't show up or even call. And, so she feels more alone because she sees all these other families and these big families and just assumes, they're one big happy family. And then you also get to see that side of Leela where she loves it. She enjoys that she has a big family, but she also feels a little unseen. And when Ria understands that, everyone is battling their own little things, that she, I think, starts loosening the guard around her and kind of opening. So I just want to show that. I feel like at that age, all your problems feel so big and you feel like you're the only one going through that. So that was kind of why I did the contrast in both structures.
It was beautifully written, and it came through very clearly from beginning to end, of what Ria thought at the beginning, and then at the end when she was really opened up and said, oh, okay, you have it hard too. It's just that what I assumed wasn't really the truth. So you did a beautiful job of that. So I love magic. That's one of my favorite parts about books. But because your book has, Astranthia is a magic infused place. Magic is running through the earth, and it's in the creatures and in the people. And so can you talk about how you built that world and what kind of magic you included in it?
Yeah. So with Astranthia, I, like from the get-go, so I hadn't planned my magic system before, to be very honest.
I get that.
It was going to be magic. What type, how, I have no idea. But in my mind, the go-to for Astranthia or for any like magical place was this just gorgeous, beautiful, lush, verdant place. And, I'm originally from Mumbai, and it's a city, so it's very similar to New York, you would say. So, it's concrete jungle. So when I think of a place where I'm going to escape into this like magical land, it's just like full of nature and flowers. And so I just wanted that I knew from the beginning. And even when I was writing Darjeeling, like the India part of the book, I set it very consciously in Darjeeling, which is in the northeast part of the country, because I wanted to showcase a different part of India that not too many people know about. I guess if anybody does know about it, they probably know about the tea, but they don't know anything other than that. And again, when you think of India, you just think of, the cities, or then you have, horrible stereotypical representations of, villages and snake charmers and nonsense like that. And so I wanted to, again, showcase something that was underrated and beautiful, because the country has gorgeous landscapes that, again, don't get enough spotlight. And so nature suddenly became this really important thread and theme that I subconsciously put into the book. And when I started to think about the magic system, you always want to try and do something different. And there is no original idea, but you can try and give it a little spin and a twist.
Yeah.
And I, didn't want to go the wand way, because that's been done and done well. So I decided to make this very rooted in nature. And then also kind of, on a deeper level, to send the message that like us on Earth right now, even we take just so much, we take nature for advantage, and we just completely have disregarded how much the importance of nature is, how much we need to nurture her, how much damage can come from the way we're treating her. And that's kind of tied into Astranthia, that if you keep taking advantage of the floral magic and the what runs through this land, that you're going to pay a price. And so that's how I then decided to come up with a magic system that is rooted in literally the earth, the roots, the flowers, the trees, and then in every magical creature and every being in Astranthia that is just there in their
in their bodies. Which is interesting listening, because in my second book I have like earth magic too, but the fact that like our systems are completely not even remotely similar, but the fact that we both felt compelled to write something inside of the earth.
Exactly. That's exactly what I felt when I read A Wilder Magic. And I'm like, this is so cool. The only difference is they pull the magic from the earth, and this just is there through all of them. But even the characters have the magic in them for them to be able to pull it. But again, amazing how the execution of that kind of a magic system is
different. I loved reading that. It was a nice surprise for me. But I also liked hearing you say right now that that was like a subconscious thing that you started writing in, because I think a lot of times as writers or authors, the most powerful things that we end up writing are the things our subconscious includes. And so the fact that the magic and the earth and like the land and being selfless and treating the earth well, that was such a huge theme in your book, that just like came through because of your subconscious. That is pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it was cool. It was great. But I have to add that like I initially wrote it in a way in which not everyone had magic. Only the royals had magic. And my editor was like, is that the message you're trying to send? That, the royals are superior and the common people are not, and hence they have magic and the common people don't. And I was like, no. And so
this is why we have good editors. That's awesome. Oh, and that segues beautifully to one of my favorite themes that you had in your story was about power. We talk so much about who has power in society and how they choose to wield that power. So you really talk about, you have a bully at the beginning of your story that like that power dynamic comes through clearly between Tara and Ria. And then you talk about power in the tea fields and the managers there and how they dominate and control the people, like Ria's mom who works there. And then you talk about power in terms of like the royals and how the current queen is wielding her power in a very cruel way. Was that a subconscious thing, or did you really mean to include that in your story when you started writing?
No, I definitely think it was subconscious. Especially with the bully Tara and the manager, but kind of to just, I guess the subconscious part was to show that, obviously Ria and her family are poor, and the microaggressions they face on the daily.
Yes.
Like the queen being bad, of course, that was conscious. And there's, I try and give a, slightly more rounded reason as to why the queen is who she is, show some of her insecurities and vulnerabilities as well. And all of that was very conscious. But I would say with the bully and the manager, it wasn't. But I wanted to show that, people from a certain, and in a broader sense, if from a certain community or a certain strata of society, the amount that they have to deal with on the daily is just, it's relentless. Yes, it is awful. And Ria has just grown up with that, just knowing that, you're on the back foot all the time. And you have this constant, she has felt the power dynamics from a very young age. And so that was, so as I included, and then when I started refining the book, should I keep this part? Should I not keep it? That's when it became conscious. And I'm like, no, I want to keep it.
Yeah.
But when I first wrote it with scenes and, it was just more like, that came subconsciously. But then I wanted to keep it because I think that theme was very good. And even with the queen, I wanted to show, I don't know, maybe I'm giving too much away, but with the power structure, I kind of wanted to show that it's what we do with the advantages and the power, or the things that we have that can be used against somebody, or you may be put in a situation where you can put yourself first or somebody else first. And I feel like that's the genesis of power, when you just repeatedly keep putting yourself first, and then you develop ego, and you just stop caring about other people, and you lose empathy for people.
Yeah.
And Ria's on a slippery slope herself, because she just keeps feeling victimized, which is the other thing with power. So I kind of wanted to touch upon all of those, in a very deeper sense. I don't know if a young reader might pick it up, but I would hope that, with deeper analysis, that this would come out, because I think that power, especially in our world today, is it is a very current topic to discuss.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and the fact that if you hadn't included those scenes, like that shows so much of who Ria is that she tries to fight back against all of that from the beginning. She tries to fight back against Tara the bully, or she doesn't understand why she wants to fight back for her mom, against the managers. And I don't know if that's the right word to use, manager, but
no, it's right, the manager. But she knows that you can't do that, because if you do that,
you can't.
Just keep your mouth shut. You go hide. You do whatever you need to do. Like, it is just understood. It's no explanation needs to be given.
Absolutely, but she has that fight in her, and you show that from the beginning of the story, and it makes so much sense why she ends up making the decisions she does through the story. And if you hadn't included those scenes at the beginning, you wouldn't understand that part of her personality more. So I love that you included all of those in there. That was beautifully done. And look at that, segues beautifully. So because I wanted to talk about Ria's, like, the self-sacrifice that she does. She like, her journey takes her on this path, is that every single time she has to make a big decision, she is having to decide, do I want to be the person that I was, or will I give up a part of who I was to become somebody new? And she always kind of just, like, fearlessly dives in, and that's the part of her personality that, like, is ready to fight. And I love that you built her that way. Was that, like, why did you end up deciding to kind of take her on that journey?
So again, I wanted to show her character growth, and I think that she has been, a pretty selfish kid, but very understandable way. I find it very understandable.
It makes sense. Yeah,
she's just going through so much, that even though I wrote her to be quote unquote unlikable in the beginning, I wanted her to be that way, and I use the word selfish in a way in which she's just looking out for herself this whole time, because, like you mentioned before, with so many different instances, she's just been beat down and beat down and beat down. So of course she's going to be selfish. It's her way of protecting herself. And then I feel like as the story progresses, and she starts letting her guard down, she lets some people in. Even her taking, Leela along with her was a very selfish thing she did. So, like we said before, like, she's introverted, she didn't have any friends, and her brother suddenly gone missing, and she feels very guilty that he has gone, because it also, there was, again, I don't want to give too much away, but there was a fight, and she is to blame for that fight, or she had a role to play, a big role to play in that fight. So she holds all of this guilt, and as much as she has sibling rivalry, she obviously doesn't want her brother to go missing. And so anyway, so he's gone, and so she's off on this adventure. She needs to find him, but she also doesn't want to do it alone because she's scared. And Leela is the next best option, and it's really not. I'm going to increase my light here. I don't know if I feel like I'm getting dark.
That's good. That's good.
So she selfishly takes Leela along, and it's as we progress in the story and the stakes get higher and the obstacles get, again, the stakes for the obstacles get higher, she starts to realize how much her selfishness has affected people, how she's putting their lives in danger. And that's when she's and she realizes how much these friends that she has made along the way are selflessly helping her out when
Yes.
she's done nothing of that nature to warrant that kind of, friendship or loyalty or, support or anything. And I think it hits her like, oh my gosh. And she starts to,
Huge.
that she starts to see that she owes them that, and she wants to give them that, and
Yeah.
she wants to be a good person, and because she's just hardened by all of the things that have happened. She's a real softie at the end of the day, I feel. So I wanted to, so that's where the self-sacrifice comes in, where she's the, no, I'm going to now put myself first, because I've always felt that nobody was on my side, and so I was just like me, but I'm realizing that maybe I projected this sort of perception and energy of like walls, so nobody could come in, and now I want them in, and for me to again earn them as friends, I have to be a good friend, and I think that's where the self-sacrificing nature of things sort of comes into play.
I loved that. Just her internal transformation and how she changes was just,
and she battles change. I mean, she's not like, all right, oh my gosh, I need to change.
No. She digs her feet in of like, no, I don't want to. But then when she does, she really sees and she values herself so much more after that.
And the people around her suddenly, she values how important friendship and family and just, relationships and bonds with people are, like how important they are in your life.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And such a good important middle grade theme, because friendships in middle school are so vital and also so difficult to maintain. So that was beautiful. Okay, so that's what I have for my questions, but we do have some questions in the chat. So look, we talked about magic. I like this one. What scene or section brought you the most joy to write?
Oh my.
That's a good question.
The scene, I really enjoyed writing the scene with the serpent lilies in the lake. It's where Ria has to go, and this is her like first real act of rescuing Rohan, or like going on this rescue mission to find him. And she and Leela have to traverse this deadly lake with these evil serpent lilies. And I really enjoy writing that scene, because that scene had come to me almost fully formed from the beginning. Like I knew this was going to be there.
Cool.
I knew what they were going to be called. It was just, those magical scenes where, wow, I didn't have to do that much of the hard work and figuring out how I was going to do this. So I really enjoyed that scene. I think it has the least number of edits from the whole book.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, and that makes sense. If it came to you fully formed, that like,
yes,
it came to you how it needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, of course it was been edited, but
but you know what? That was one of the scenes too that was like so smooth, and like it felt very joyous to read, just because there was so much action and like, are they going to survive? Like I love that scene to read. Yeah. So that's wonderful.
And it was fun writing the Queen's character. I feel like it's always fun writing. Because everybody's so good in the book otherwise. And I'm like, oh yes, let's sharpen my claws now. I get to be bad. So that was fun.
Well, that's actually, I didn't know that there was going to be the second point of view, that the Queen would be in there. Did you have that dual point of view from the beginning, or did you add that in later on when you were editing?
Oh boy. I did. I actually had 3 points of view. Ria, the Queen, and Rohan. It had a whopping 91,000 words when I first read. This is me being the very amateur writer, trying to be an author. They were like,
okay. For anybody who's not an author who's writing, 91,000 words is a very long middle grade novel. Most are at like 60. I don't know what you ended up at, but.
Correct. No, 60 is the sweet spot number. But if you're writing, you're creating a whole fantasy system, you're allowed another 10,000 words. Yeah. So I would say, 70, like 50 to 70 is the range. And I ended up at 71 eventually. I mean, I couldn't even bring it down to 70. But
I mean, your book is so fast to read, though. It does not feel long. That is super That's very interesting that you had so many points of view, but the Queen was like fascinating to read. So I love that you were allowed to keep that part in. Okay, let me see for questions. I didn't ask this. So this is which characters do you relate to the most? And you didn't say, are you more like Ria or Rohan with your personality differences between you and your sister?
I'm actually Rohan and my sister's Ria.
Really? Oh, I love that.
Yep. Yes. But I don't know. It's different. It's difficult to say who I relate to because I feel like I know Ria so well because obviously she's been in my head for so long, and I write through her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would say I relate to Ria the most, but I'm actually very similar to Rohan, and my sister is very similar to Ria, which is quite ironical. Leela is amazing. She's one of my favorite characters to write. But I feel like, you have to just be this ridiculously amazing human to be Leela. And I wish I was as amazing soul as she is. So she was really, really great to write, especially she added a little bit of humor and levity to Ria's seriousness, especially in the beginning of the book. And I like that she kind of keeps Ria in check too. And it was great to have their friendship blossom. Also go through its ups and downs, but through the book. And so Neela was a great character, right? I had so much fun writing her, but I would relate to Ria, but I am Rohan.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, because when you were saying about like siblings are so different, because that's how me and my sister are. But my sister is Rohan and I am Ria, like very clearly. So that's really funny. I guess I would have assumed you're more like Ria because that was your main character, but that makes sense that you relate to her though, because you wrote through her and you understand her as well as you do.
Yeah, I find it really strange I find it boring to write characters that are very similar to myself because I just feel like there's nothing for me more. Yeah, like I know this, and I feel like when I'm writing outside of my own personality, I have to dig deeper and look further, and that's more exciting to unravel a character than be like, well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, do you have any authors or books that you feel inspire you or are just some of your favorite books?
Well, especially in writing Ria, I will say that it goes like way back to when I was a kid. I've read a lot of Nancy Drew. I love reading. Back in India, we read a lot of British literature, and we, as kids, I feel like every Indian kid across the country has read Enid Blyton books. I don't know if it's Blyton or Enid. I say Enid Blyton. And she wrote she has a canon of children's lit that she has written that spans from lower middle grade up until solid middle grade, and they were always fantasy, adventures, mysteries, and so I just always gravitated to them. And so I think that has when I started to write this book, I was like, I wanted to be, I wanted to have a mystery. I wanted it to be fantasy because I love fantasy. I wanted these kids solving things and solving these clues, and I feel like all of that again very subconsciously entered this book. But one of my absolute favorite books since I was a kid, and I reread it as an adult, which I was very scared to do because sometimes that can just ruin the experience and the nostalgia of a book. I read Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. And I love that book, and I love Anne as a character, and I think she influenced me to write Ria as not someone that's again a goody two shoes and so prim and proper and does everything the right way. She gave me freedom to write Ria with all of her flaws and insecurities and really own it. And so that book really influenced me. And then in terms of prose, I love Philip Pullman's style of writing, from his Dark Materials.
Yes.
Just lose yourself in his prose. And so I always, that's the kind of prose that I, that comes to me naturally. And I just absolutely love reading as well. So then I tried to have that included.
Well, I can tell that you're influenced by stories with some mystery elements in it because you have a huge section of your story that's all about like puzzles and deciphering clues. And it does turn into a mystery for a
Mhm.
while, which
Mhm.
I didn't expect and was very fun because Ria doesn't think that she's smart, but
Yeah.
here she is solving all of these clues in this really intelligent way, which is like so interesting to look at that difference of her perception of herself and then the mystery, and she solves it beautifully. So I can tell that you were inspired by those types of stories.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you picked up on that because that was a very conscious way of me trying to show, the different types of ways people can be smart.
Smart.
You
Yeah.
just don't have to just, get top marks in your school. Like it's
Yeah.
so, there's so much more to that. And Leela is that way too. Like she's just like you can tell like she loves to read and she loves to research. And that's another sign of, um, I don't want to say intelligence, but just like, people having a skill set that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily just have to be the one of
Yes.
getting grades.
Absolutely. Okay. I think we have time for another question. So let me see. How long from first idea to publication? So how long has your journey been to getting Ria out in the world?
It has been a very long journey.
Yeah.
It has been
It
over,
always is.
yeah, it really has. It has been over 10 years to have from
Oh,
Lost
wow.
Genesis to publication. I think it's
Wow.
probably 12 now. I feel a lot of that, the first 10 years was a lot. There's definitely me not being disciplined enough.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the fact that when I wrote, I used to go back and rewrite and keep editing before I continued to go further. So I spent so much of my time editing like the first half of the book
Mm-hmm.
and spent years doing that. And then eventually when I realized I was just not making good, fast progress, and I just started writing right till the end. And I had the whole manuscript and I went back and re-edited everything. That part that I had edited, so many parts of it, I deleted. So I lost a lot of that in that process, which now I don't do. But then also, life happened or married
Yeah.
and, so that's where I feel like some of the discipline I wasn't disciplined enough. And so that added to the longevity of this process. And then my querying and publishing journey was also a long journey because,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's publishing.
that is publishing, exactly. And Ria had her own unique struggles with the process because it was harder to sell this book because I was flat out told that it wasn't, because the whole book is not set in England. And I understand that, that's an easier way to market the book. But the fact is that Astranthia is not Indian. It is an East meets West sort of utopia. It's kind of it's the way I grew up in Mumbai, grew up in India as a kid, surrounded by Indian culture and everything Indian, but also grew up on pop culture and Hollywood movies and,
Mm-hmm.
pop music. And I love the Backstreet Boys. I was like obsessed with Keanu Reeves at the time, things like that. And then influenced by, again, British literature, and then had family in England and in the States. So it's like such a, amalgamation of both cultures. Played such a huge influence in my life and in so many of our lives, especially when you live outside the West.
Mm-hmm.
That was Astranthia to me. It was this mix of all of these different cultures and places, and I didn't want someone to pin it down to like, oh, this is definitely in the East, definitely in the West, because it's this fantasy land. Like no one, has that idea of, if you think of Narnia or if you think of Harry Potter. I mean, yes, it is so obviously British, but like that's not the focal point. Like nobody went, I bet, and said, are you sure this is, but can you make this a little more British? Like, that just doesn't happen. And I had a lot of that with Ria.
Yeah.
So there was some of that as well, but here we are.
So do you think, because publishing is trying to make strides to be more accepting and having a more diverse authors and diverse places and characters. So do you think that Ria had to be published now because you had so many of those like rejections earlier on?
Like, you're saying that there wouldn't have been a chance before?
Well, it sounds like it was a lot
No,
harder.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think even right now, I think there was I had some stroke of good luck somewhere suddenly sweep
Yeah.
me up, because I had given up on the book completely. It was
Yeah.
done. It had died. I had got rejections from everywhere, and there was no chance. And then I had submitted to Mango and Marigold Press, which is an indie press, and they specifically focus on South Asian stories across culture and diaspora. And I mean, I had emailed them months before, as is usually the case anyway. And then I got the call saying that we're really interested. And even then, I mean, I was so excited. But then I wanted to talk with the editor before we finalized anything, because I had, like I said, I had so many responses saying that, if you make if Astranthia more Indian, we will consider it. If we would like them to spend more time in India, so we see their life there. But I'm like, yeah, but her brother is missing. She has to go find him. Like, I can't give
That's
you
not the story.
another day in the life of a tea worker. And I know what you're trying to do there. And that's not what I want to show. I don't want to show India is just poor and, no, because it's the whole gamut. It's just that because one side and one part of it, especially in underrepresented communities, they just focus on pain and struggle, and we don't get to have fun. And I'm like, that's not true at all. And this is not the story, right? The whole point of writing the story was to write a joyful story in which you forget that she's Indian, she's Indian, and that she, it comes from India and stuff like that. But then that goes at the back of your mind, and that was my experience reading all of the books that I grew up reading. Because all of them were white, and some were from Britain, some were from Canada, some were from the US. But that wasn't front and center as I kept reading the book. Like, no, I got to remind myself that this is, an American way to say something, or a British thing that they're eating. Like, it's like, okay. And then you're in the story and you're with the characters. And so a lot of them wanted me to focus on the India because, again, it's like,
yeah,
I'm here to educate you about that. And that is not the point of this story.
No.
So I was really hoping that the editor would get it, because my editor is Amy Moranville, and she's, Caucasian, she's white, and she's awesome. And when we spoke about the book, and, she told me what she thought about it and the things that needed improvement, they were like proper plot things, story and character stuff, and nothing plan needs to change, or like she got it. And that was the defining moment for me to say, yes, I'm going to do this, because I think the importance in the publishing world now is not only to continuously publish stuff from other cultures, but also to publish different narratives from different cultures. It's not just, okay, you're doing a
story,
and that's the story that you're going to get, and it's successful, so let's just run with this story about an identity struggle or an immigration struggle. Like, those are very important, but just like you do with white stories, you run the gamut.
All of the stories.
You get all of them.
Yes. Well, okay. So that says so much about you as an author and a person too, is that you knew what story you wanted to write, and that you weren't going to change those elements of the story, which is so hard. That's so I can't imagine.
Oh my God, it was so sad. It broke my heart. And then
over and over.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I guess it's not going to happen for me. And then
and here we are.
Yeah, exactly. I had my week of sobbing, and then I wrote another outline for another book, and then I got my email, and it kind of was like, okay, the lesson was that this is a long game, and I feel like whether from wherever you come from and whatever culture and nationality, it's like with publishing, if you're really interested in writing stories, it's a long game. So if it doesn't work with one book, try with the other, because we all have our own set of issues. It's not like I'm the only one who has extra issues.
Yes.
You have my own.
Well, thank you for talking about all that, because I'm glad we kind of got to talk about that part of the story too a little bit, because I know that's really important to you.
I have a question for you, because I really want to know, because I don't know when I'm going to get you.
Okay.
So I have a two-parter, because I know we're running out of time. So
we'll squeeze it in.
We have two questions. One is that both your books are so thematic. And we've discussed this before, that home is a very important theme in your book. But I found, especially with Wilder Magic, also with The Wolf of Cape Fen, but this is my recent read.
It's a strong theme.
Yes, and it's your newest release. So I thought that this book had so much being said about fear and the acceptance of being afraid and what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the stakes in this book are so high, but that became so personal to the reader,
Mm-hmm.
and up the stakes even higher. And it's a huge thing for a young person to realize that it's okay to be fearful or to know what you're fearing. And I love us. There's a sentence in the book, and I'm paraphrasing here, and Nettle says it if I'm not mistaken, but she says, wait, I jotted it down. Again, I've paraphrased, so it's not, verbatim from the book.
Fine.
But it's, just because I'm scared doesn't mean I cannot be brave. And I feel so did you come up with the plot and then the theme? Is that how you do it? Or with this book was a different theme?
This one, usually my themes come first because I am a thematic writer. That ends up being like how I drive my writing. And I knew that I wanted to write the theme of the fear of change. So just like Ria, my main character's sibling digs her heels in and refuses to change because she's terrified. And she rationalizes it in a whole bunch of ways, but really she's just scared. She's scared of who she'll become if she gives in.
What you lose, I feel.
Yes.
You feel like you're going to lose something, that there's nothing to gain if you change.
Yep.
It's something that you feel such comfort and safety in.
Yeah.
It's just such a powerful thing. It's
Thank you.
It is, it's so amazing. It's just amazing. And
thank you. I'm glad you saw that in the story, because that's one of the main themes that I wanted to write into it.
100%. And I feel that, I feel like with me, mine is exactly the opposite. I'm like plot. And then I'm like, oh my God, this needs to be deeper.
Tied together.
Yeah. She just has to solve a bunch of clues or quests and then get to the finish end. And I'm like, I need to dig deeper. I need to think. So for me, themes come second. And third, and maybe this will change with the next few books, because I feel like I will approach them dually, like with both these things. With the first book, I was like plot. And then Ria was so flat as a character, and all of them really. And so for me, it's the other way around. But when I was reading A Wilder Magic, of the main story, which is also, she, again, I don't want to give too much away, but she creates, she has to live under a water bubble, basically, because she doesn't want to move. And how she's going to survive in that place is a whole other situation. Terrible. And things keep getting worse and worse and worse. But at the same time, it's like I'm reading two stories that are so beautifully intertwined. Is, the plot of the book, which is she has trapped herself in this water bubble and needs to get out. But then it's her journey in figuring out her own inner self, understanding her heart. Exactly. And you can relate on every level, because you don't have to be stuck under a water bubble to know how difficult it is to leave something
and move and change. And
so that was just amazing. And
thank you.
The other question I had is that, do you have any tips, which I might use myself or for any other writer or author out there, in writing metaphors? You write. Oh, can I read one? I'm going to read one real quick, okay? I mean, and this is not even the best.
Funny, Payal.
This is really, really good. But this is not even the best one, because I'm reading it and I'm sitting outside and reading. And I'm like, oh my God, I have nothing. I hate dog earing the book, so I wouldn't do that. But I didn't have anything to stick or put Post-its on, and so I lost the best ones. But this one, I had this thing.
Funny.
I'm going to read one out, and it says, Mama's eyes, the same color as the sky, when it dripped rain from invisible clouds, looked at her blank. When it dripped rain from invisible... Are you kidding me? So, I mean, I don't know. Do you... Because it's so difficult to write a good metaphor, because, again, they've been done to death. You default to the ones that have been used a gazillion times, and it is so hard to come up with a unique way to basically talk about the color of their eyes without saying it's gray.
Yeah.
How many different ways can you say gray or white, black or brown or hazel, right? Without.
Yeah. I'll say that that's one of the things in my writing that I sit the longest with. I will physically just sit in front of the computer and go, How do I do this? But I will send it to you because, and if there are any authors or writers who are watching, I have some resources on my website, and I have some exercises that I made for some writing mentees on writing descriptions. So I will send them to you.
Please. Because
Yeah.
I love descriptions. I mean, it's pretty clear with my book.
They're so fun when you find like a perfect, like that is exactly the color of the eyes that I want to describe.
And when it's written like that, it's just like, yes, but it's not easy to come up with that metaphor.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
No. Well, I'm glad you read and enjoyed that. And that's really sweet. That made my day. So thank you so much for doing this with me. And yay, there's wonderful. We have the bookstore. This was so wonderful talking with you, Payal.
It was so wonderful talking with you, Juliana. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Me too. It was a pleasure getting to have both of you, and thank you so much. Just such a great conversation. And Payal, I am so happy that you stuck with Ria and that you have gotten her out into the public, because I think there's something very beautiful that you said about how we need to see the beauty and not just the struggle. And it's such a very important thing in representation, and I'm so happy that we have you in our middle grade fantasy world, and I'm excited for other books. Before we log off really quickly, would you guys mind sharing where people can find you, whether it be website, social media, the best way for everyone to keep in touch with you and see what's going on and what you got coming out next?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is PayalDoshiAuthor.com. My Twitter handle is PayalDWrites. My Instagram is Payal Doshi Author. I am very active on Twitter and on Instagram. And my website is usually the place where you can find most of my upcoming events or anything book related that I have to share.
Yes. And my website is julianalbrandt.com, and my Twitter and Instagram are the same handle of Juliana L. Brandt, and you can find me all of those places.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Payal. Thank you, Juliana. Everyone, Ria and the Blood of the Nectar is out on shelves, as well as A Wilder Magic. You can find them at the purchase book button down below. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.